Hello Year 9, we are now moving on to our next section of work on prejudice, this time looking at anti-Semitism and the Holocaust. Okay, so first of all, what is anti-Semitism? So it's hostility or prejudice. Hostility, if you're being hostile to someone, you're being angry at them, you hate them. So it's hatred against Jewish people. But where does anti-Semitism come from? So there are lots of reasons why some people choose to hate Jewish people or choose to be anti-Semitic. Okay, so Jews as a people have been around for 5,000 years, since the time of the Egyptians, and they were slaves in Egypt. And so right throughout their history, they have this experience of being different and often finding themselves in different lands and sort of standing out and also being persecuted or picked on because they're Jewish. They've always followed a different religion to people around them. So, Jesus himself was Jewish. I know that sometimes blows people's minds. He was the founder of Christianity, so he wasn't a Christian, he was Jewish. So the Jews saw Jesus as a rabbi, a teacher, someone who had a message for others from God, but they didn't see him as anything more than that, whereas Christians see him as the Son of God. Jesus was a Jew, but he disagreed with a lot of the Jewish laws. He ridiculed or made fun of the chief priests and some of the things they chose to do, and he disobeyed Sabbath laws. So they're not supposed to work on the Sabbath, they weren't supposed to do anything that might class as work, and Jesus healed people on the Sabbath, and that didn't go down well with the Jewish authorities, so there was sort of a clash between those people who were in charge of the Jewish religion and Jesus. And in the end, a fellow Jewish man or one of his disciples betrays him to the Roman authorities. So the Jews want Jesus out of the way, so they hand him over to the Romans, and they say that he's challenging Roman and Jewish law. So the Romans crucify Jesus like a common criminal, but the New Testament writers made sure that the Jews were seen as responsible for the crime. So they say the Jews wanted him to die. Well, what they mean by that is the Jewish authorities, the men who were in charge of the Jewish religion at the time. And the thing is, when the New Testament was being written, the Roman Empire was converting to Christianity, so becoming Christians. And as you may or may not know, they'd spent time before they converted to Christianity persecuting and picking on Christians, the sort of throwing them to the lions and in the gladiatorial ring and all of that sort of stuff. So they, obviously didn't want to get on the bad side of the Romans, so they make sure that it's the Jewish authorities that are seen as responsible for the crime of putting Jesus to death or wanting Jesus to die. So, as I just said, Christianity soon took over the Roman Empire, becoming the world's largest religion. The Jews became a minority group, and many Christians blamed or continued to blame the Jews for Jesus' death. So it's, this idea really that anti-Semitism to some extent comes out of the religion of Christianity and this blame that was put onto Jewish people, although it was just the Jewish authorities at the time, but the Jews as a whole are blamed for Jesus' death. So, the other problem that Jewish people had was that they didn't have a country of their own. So wherever they lived, they were a minority group. Jews looked different from their neighbours. They had a different language, they had a different religion, customs and beliefs. So they sort of become outsiders because they're different, they stand out. Particularly if, like this picture you can see on the slide, that's a very orthodox Jewish man, and you can see he's got the side curls and the beard and this hat, and he looks different, and that they stood out, and people didn't like that, or they they were seen as a target because they were different. In medieval Europe, Christians were forbidden to lend money to other people. Jewish people were allowed to be money lenders. So, as they were an educated people, they set up banks, they loaned money, but with that comes frustration and resentment, because if somebody's lent money to you and then you have to pay it back, and maybe you have to pay a bit more in interest, and you feel a bit upset about that, a bit angry about that, it's easy to take it out on those people. So people became suspicious of Jewish people, and the hate starts to grow. During the Crusades, Christians were trying to take over the Holy Land, take it back. Violence breaks out against Jews. So not just it's against Muslims, but it's against Jews as well. So their houses and synagogues were looted and burned. Jews were murdered by the thousands. So again, you've got an example there of Jews being killed and people trying to wipe out Jews. Christians began to spread dreadful rumours about Jews, saying they murdered Christian children, drank their blood. So all these sort of rumours and these kind of ridiculous stories start spreading around. If you, in year 8, you would have done in humanities, you'd looked at witchcraft. So this idea of, anyone you don't particularly like, you can accuse them of being a witch, of being something to be scared of, something to be gotten rid of. So even in medieval times, there's this sort of way of trying to separate Jews, to try and make them different. And we're going to see this come back when we start looking at the Holocaust and the treatment of Jews by the Nazis. So Jews were made to wear pointed hats or badges so people knew who they were. They had to live in ghettos, sections of the city where they're separated from other people, and that's exactly what Nazis are going to do to them once the Holocaust gets up and running, once this persecution of Jews really starts to progress and become worse and worse. So over the centuries, these prejudices and stories and rumours and suspicion start growing into something really ugly. So people began saying the Jews were plotting worldwide to destroy governments and seize power throughout the world, and that's certainly an idea that was pushed by the Nazis. This is an anti-Semitic poster that was on the walls of the German Parliament in 1920. You can see this beautiful German woman in the front of the picture, and in the shadows, in the background behind her, is this sort of creepy looking figure with sort of a big nose, just trying to sort of represent Jews in a stereotyped way. So it's propaganda, it's trying to promote an idea and getting other people in Germany on board with the same idea that the Jews are to be, sort of not to be trusted, that they're suspicious, all of those kind of things. The alleged Jewish influence is seen to lead to the death of the German nation in the 1920s. So they're seen to be behind when things go wrong in Germany. Right, so the first task you're going to do is to make a list in your book, or you can do it on paper, or you can do it on the computer, the laptop, whatever you've got. So you're making a list of as many reasons as you can to explain why anti-Semitism exists. What causes it? Where does it come from? So we've just gone through, so go back over the slides I just read through with you, and you'll notice that some points are highlighted in red. Those parts particularly will be useful for your list as to why there is anti-Semitism. I would pause this video here now, go back and do that task, and then when you've finished, you can go on in the video. So, what was Jewish life like before the Holocaust? Okay, Jews, as we said, didn't have a country of their own, so they were spread all over Europe, in every country from Britain to Russia. And on this page of the slide, you can see it shows the age of the of the Jewish community, so how long they've been in that particular country. Jews have lived in Germany for about 1600 years. Between 1905 and 1931, the Nobel Prize in various scientific fields was awarded to 10 German Jews. And there's a picture there of a very famous German Jew who I'm sure you will recognise as Albert Einstein. And he left Germany before the Holocaust, and it was just as well that he did, because he might have met the same fate as many other Jews did. But he escaped Germany, he left, and what an amazing, intelligent man he was, and what great discoveries we would have missed had he not survived the Holocaust. So Jewish life was good. There were less than 1% of Jews living in Germany, and life was pretty good. Over 80% were born in Germany, and they saw themselves first and foremost as Germans. So as far as they were concerned, they were German. And, they felt what the word sometimes used as assimilated. They felt a part of the community. They were German first and Jewish second. A lot of them didn't even follow the Jewish religion, and some didn't even realise that they were Jewish by birth. So they may have, ancestors may have married out of the faith and so on, and they just were German. That's how they saw themselves. And what we're going to see happening is that they are separated from the rest of the German non-Jewish population and made to feel different. So there's some examples there of life in Poland, a Jewish community school, and then you've got German Jewish women athletes in Berlin, 1935. And so what you need to do now is press this screen, and so you need to run the PowerPoint as a PowerPoint slide, and or as a PowerPoint show, and then if you click on this, it will start to play a video to show you Jewish life before the Holocaust. So what I would do as you're watching is to make some notes about what life was like. So there's a quote here: life in Germany prior to the advent of the Nazis, so before the Nazis arrived, was full of richness, full of cultural and historical tradition, full of Jewishness. So that, Jews there were a lot of Jewish musicians and authors and artists, and they made the culture much richer, they made things much more interesting, but all of that is going to get swept away. The Nazis, when they come into power, start using things like propaganda. The images you're going to see over the next couple of slides are from a German children's book called The Poisonous Mushroom. So the Nazis were even trying to influence the thoughts of children. Imagine having a storybook that is basically racist, that teaches you to hate people. So have a look at the pictures, have a think about your reaction. How do you think Jews would have felt about these pictures? You don't have to answer these questions in your book, but it's just something for you to think about. So there's the cover, and you can see this sort of stereotypical image again of a Jewish man. So here's this picture of this very sort of dodgy, creepy looking Jewish man talking to these innocent German children. It's trying to give the impression, or trying to put this idea into the minds of non-Jewish Germans that Jewish people were suspicious and not to be trusted. Again, this other picture here is this idea: there they are together, plotting something, talking about something, again being suspicious, gathering wealth together, and again this idea that Jews are not to be trusted, and it's trying to put these thoughts into the minds of German people. Another image, again, sort of trying to keep this stereotype going that Jews have taken all of Germany's money and they're the reason why Germany was poor at the time. Obviously, it wasn't the reason. They had come out of the First World War. They had been made to pay compensation, and it basically bankrupted the country. They couldn't afford things, there was no work and all of those sort of things. And when Hitler arrives, he tries to make things better. And one of the ways he does that is trying to blame Germany's problems on Jewish people. Again, you've got this image here of showing German children being taught to identify Jewish people by this stereotype, this idea of what a Jewish person looks like, which we're going to again see later in the Holocaust, when Jewish people are kind of measured according to their race. So their hair colour is looked at, their nose size is looked at, all these sort of almost trying to make racism a science. So this again is an example. So again, you need to press when you're going through the PowerPoint slide. You need to press the screen, and there is an example of the discrimination experienced by Jewish people under the Nazi government. So it's a story about a German Jewish high jumper and her experience just before the Olympics and persecution that she experienced. So again, quite a strong quote here. From the earliest days, from the 4th century, the 6th century, the missionaries of Christianity had said in effect to the Jews, "You may not live among us as Jews." So they were trying to change their religion, trying to convert them to Christianity. Then in the Middle Ages, the rulers decide, "You may not live among us." So that's putting them into ghettos, putting them away from the rest of the community. And the Nazis finally decreed, "You may not live." So it looks, that quote shows the development of hatred and what it's ended up with, 6 million Jews being murdered. So you've got 2 tasks now to finish before the end of the lesson, and that's to describe what life was like for Jews in Germany before the Holocaust. Use the slides and the video clip to help you. I would say write at least half a page to a page, if not a bit more. So talking about what life was like, how they felt about being German, all those sorts of things. And then for task 3, when you finish that, do some research how life changed for Jewish people in Germany after Hitler came to power, and then make some notes in your book. So you're looking for things like, what laws did they bring in that affected Jews? How did they treat Jewish people once the Nazis took over? Okay, so once you've done those things, that's it for the end of the lesson today. Okay, and then we'll be moving on to look at the Nazis and then sort of the impact of them coming into power on Jewish people in the next couple of lessons.